The one question that I was asked was, is the pace of donations for the campaign coming in at the rate we expected or not? And that was a tough question to answer, because first of all, we really didn't know what to expect, we being the board, because our organization hasn't, I won't say it's not good, but we don't have a history of considering Friendship Force as an organization that we contribute to. Yeah, sometimes we do when we scholarships for the conventions, or the conferences, I should say. And there are members who do contribute, but overall, many organizations, their volunteers are actually major donors, and that's not the case with Friendship Force. So and there have been contribution fundraising campaigns before that frankly weren't terribly successful. But at this point, this campaign is amazingly successful, absolutely incredible. If you were to go to the donate page, the kindest page, the total right now is somewhere showing $109,000. And that's really over the space of about 3 weeks, 2 weeks actually, as far as the fundraising. So this is totally amazing. However, that 109,000 is not actually a good reflection of how much money has come in. Because when we sat down to figure out how we were going to approach the issues that were facing us with the pandemic and lack of travel, and we'll speak to that a little bit more later. But we decided that the best thing for us to do was to divide up the globe based on the regions that the board members are from. Philanthropy fundraising is very different in the United States from what it is in other countries. For example, there is one issue has to do with whether or not the currency can actually leave the country, and how can it leave the country. That's one issue. Another issue is the rate of exchange and the power of the purchase in other countries. If you were to take Australia, for example, an Australian dollar leaving Australia and coming to the US right now is almost a 50% reduction. Now, I know we can get into the discussions of difference of power of currency and, you know, what money can buy in one place and it can buy in another, and same amount can buy in another place. But let's not get into that. So a decision was made early on that we would approach the issue of fundraising and saving Friendship Force differently in different countries. So in Australia and New Zealand, the approach is quite different than it is in the United States. Japan, very different. In Australia and New Zealand, the money being raised is staying in those currencies in their countries. And this can be handled because our staff is global. And some of our staff members are being paid in the currency of the country in which they're working. So keeping the currency there makes sense. Is that making sense to everybody so far? Okay. The other issue is that in this approach, this different approach based on different cultures, in Japan, one of the former board members has volunteered to run the campaign there. And he's looking at it from a different perspective. And he's saying, everyone in Japan should contribute. Every member of Friendship Force there. Maybe it's a very small amount, but everyone should contribute. And that is very consistent with the way things operate in Japan. So that's why that 109,000 may actually be closer at this point to around 177,000. So that brings us very close to the 200,000 that the sustainability plan is built up around. Let's see, I'm making sure that I haven't missed anything. Okay. So how did we get to where we are? Well, Friendship Force is built on an interesting business model. Many organizations raise money on an ongoing basis. They have many volunteers. They have a ratio of what they pay staff out of their total budget that's much smaller than ours. And that's because they have a different business model. If you look at an organization like, say, the Food Bank or Meals on Wheels, they raise money to provide food, and in some cases deliver it to people. So the money they're raising is for a product. In Friendship Force, the revenue stream is from travel. Approximately 80% of our revenue comes from either direct travel or travel-related events. This includes cruises, journey fees, what else? What am I forgetting? The donations is a very small portion. Member fees, the two of those come together to about 17%. So our model doesn't work very well when nobody's traveling. So when the travel industry and flights were being canceled, the travel industry pretty much went south around in March, February, March, then suddenly our revenue stream went from quite healthy moving into this year to no travel at all and basically no revenue. In fact, in February, the board met and we were discussing how to appropriately use the surplus that we had from 2019. We had decided that that surplus would go to technology and to the contingency fund that should equal somewhere between 3 and 6 months worth of cash. We'd already made that decision and it was about $150,000. But then a month later, we were meeting to determine what we were going to do because the shortfall was going to be somewhere in the vicinity of $340,000. So that's where we are now, attempting to raise, that's where that 340,000 comes from, actually. However, the staff, the board, and especially the finance committee of the board have put together a sustainability plan that takes us into 2021, approximately third quarter, and if it's not I should put it this way, that is a somewhat conservative approach. It involves layoffs, furloughs, 20% reduction in staff at this point. And it is not an optimistic approach. We're not, betting that we're going to have a miracle sometime around January. And yet we believe that with the 200,000, we can have a sustainable path through into approximately third quarter of 2021. Now, I'm sure you've got other questions, but some of the resources that you may have had a chance to read or may not and listen to include the new blog.friendshipforce.org. And with a wave, just wave your hand. Have you seen that blog? Go check it out. It's worth checking out, blog.friendshipforce.org. And there's a lot of good information there, especially if you're interested in getting into the financials. You can get there from the homepage of friendshipforce.org by clicking on Learn More. There's included on that page is the financial impact report. It's the one that has the beautiful graph that shows us with a very healthy revenue in February, and then suddenly no revenue at all. And that graph just, for me, it really clearly spelled out the situation we were in. It has the complete financial stability plan, and it has a very good, thank you. It has a very good video of, that's the one at top where it says Friendship Force Complete 2020 Financial Overview. This is a 12-minute video put together by the board treasurer, James Permana. And James has done an excellent job of explaining all of the finances and answering some questions. And the bottom line is, I wish they kind of formatted that a little better. The bottom line is Friendship Force is not closing. It is not going into hibernation. We're not going to put everything on pause. We're going to use this time to proceed forward, and we'll get to that. We'll come back to that again. Okay, one of the reasons why we're not closing, because this question keeps coming up, and I feel I have to answer it before it's asked, is that our greatest asset is our people. It's our members, it's our staff, it's our volunteers. That's our greatest asset. If we were to close, our staff would probably find other jobs. It's a pretty talented bunch, and they're not going to, they are going to need to support their families, and we would likely lose that the talented staff that we have. Now, at this point, 3 people have been fully furloughed. Well, actually, technically 4 people have. Debbie Powell is furloughed, but in the UK, she has unemployment benefits, I guess is the best way to put it, that are approximately the same as what she was being paid. So it was an easy decision for her to take the furlough for now. Effective Friday, everyone in the staff is working 20% less and getting paid 20% less. The office is closed on Fridays, though realistically, our staff worked some interesting hours because they're all over the globe. But just to make it easy, don't expect to call Friendship Force on Friday and get an answer immediately. So if we were to close Friendship Force, we would have to start up completely, pretty much completely from scratch. And I'm not sure that that would be possible. And that is the reason why the sustainability plan has been put together. The other piece of closing that we forget is that we all plan, especially the staff, is planning our journeys, our activities 6 to 12 months out. If we were to close and say it's closed, say we were closed for 6 months, we would be somewhere between at least 12 months and 18 months before anything would happen. Not to mention we wouldn't have the staff to do it. So that's why we're not closing. So you can assure your friends that that's not happening. The reduction in staff, just if you like numbers, we had approximately 10 full-time equivalent staff, little over 10, and it's now down to a little over 5 with the furloughs and reduction in workforce and so on. Now, on April 22nd, an email was sent out to everybody that was in the Friendship Force members database. So if you didn't get that email, it probably means you're not receiving some of the information from FFI, and you might want to get yourself on the list. So if you didn't receive the email, first of all, check your spam, junk folder. Also, promotions and orders apparently is where things have been mysteriously been filed. If you don't find the email and you do want to start getting information from FFI, you can sign up on the bottom of the home page. Thank you, Chris. Or contact me and I will see that you get on the list, or contact Allison at friendshipforce.org. Any of us will get you on there right away. I guess maybe I'm a little bit of a Pollyanna, though I hate to admit that. I think that there's an opportunity here in crisis. We might not be able to travel, but we can use this time to think about some of the things that we might have wanted to do that we couldn't have done because we were too busy planning for traveling and that sort of thing. Maybe this is the time for us to take a look at some of the things that we've assumed have been the right way to always do something. The idea that we fund our organization by paying a certain amount for every journey that we take might not be the best way for us to look long-term into the future. Maybe it's time for us to consider the possibility that there are other ways to handle the revenue stream for Friendship Force. Now, it's just an idea that they're thinking a little bit about, to see if maybe there's some other ways to do some of the things that we've wanted to do. Also, this might be a good time, if the fundraising campaign is as successful as it's sort of looking like it's going to be, for us to start doing the investments into technology that we have really needed to do. Because there are some things right now that we frankly cannot do simply because we don't have the technology that we need. Though we really have made a big leap from the time when I was a field rep several years ago, and the database that the information was held in, if you can call it a database, actually began to lose data mysteriously. I think it just reached the limits of its capacity, and so anything new you put in pushed something else out. But that's only my theory. Something else that we can be doing, and I think your club's doing a tremendous job right now in doing this, is staying in touch with people. You're doing a great job of having activities, social media, to keep people engaged. That's really important. First of all, for our own sanity at this point, but also for the fact that it keeps the organization healthy. So when the time comes that you're ready to say to go back to work, if that's the expression, then you have kept your connections. Your members are still engaged. You can start planning for that next journey, wherever it may be. Now, granted, we may be looking at a different kind of travel in 2021. Who knows what's going to happen there? We may be looking at a lot more domestics, a lot more non-airline or travel. We don't know when people are going to be willing to travel, even if the flights are there. When will somebody be willing to climb back onto a cruise ship? To be very blunt about it. So it will be interesting to see what happens, but you're doing a really good job of the important business of keeping your members engaged. Thank you, and keep up the good work. FFI staff is looking at doing some similar kinds of things, some activities, some virtual activities, possibly even some virtual journeys. Now, I'm not exactly sure how those work, but I'm willing to find out. Sounds like fun. So that is a really quick overview of the finances, and there's a lot I've left out. Is there any questions that have come up that you would like to ask?
Okay, so if anyone has a question, I mentioned before on your screen there's a button that says chat. You can type your question under the chat. On the iPad, I think it's in the upper right-hand corner. You can also raise your hand. The other button says participants. If that button is open, you'll see a list of participants, and you'll see a hand. I believe it's blue. If you click on that blue hand, I will see it, and we'll call on you and unmute you. And Pat, looks like I've got you. Go ahead, Pat. You can unmute yourself. I think. There you go.
Okay. Hi, Marilyn. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I joined a little late, and I didn't know if a question got asked or not. But during our board meeting, someone asked the question about how much the staff is making. And there seems to be a perception that the staff is making a great deal of money. Why don't you try to explain that?
Okay, that's a good question, because I've heard variants of that story too. In fact, I've got a great story to tell, but I probably shouldn't because it's not appropriate. About a rumor that was floating around that Jeremy was making buku bucks as CEO.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. If you look at an older 990 form, and there is an IRS 990 form posted on the FFI website, you will see an aggregate number for staff. The only staff member whose actual pay and benefits that are mentioned are the CEO. That's an IRS requirement, I believe. And you will still see that the amount of money that he is making, including his benefits, is modest. He could easily get another job that pays a whole lot more somewhere else. Now, as far as the staff members, staff outside of the CEO, the total staff is listed on that 990 form, but no individual staff person is identified because of obvious privacy requirements. The only one that can be listed is the CEO. Now, off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact numbers, and I should. and you can see it in the external staff line of the financial report. But the reason why, one of the reasons why we went into 2020 financially with a surplus was that, one, there was some really good management of finances done during 2019. Some good decisions were made. I don't know how to put this. People on the board and started making decisions based on not just how cool something would be to do, but whether or not it made good financial sense. There were some good financial decisions made. Now, I'm not saying that anybody has done anything amiss, but in years past, there have been some choices made that maybe weren't the best in terms of financial. So the result is that was one. The other reason why that we came into 2020 so financially healthy was that we lost some very good staff. And the only reason we lost them was they could go out into the marketplace and take their skills and get a much better paying job. And that's what happened. Does that add? Now, the other piece of the sort of related here that I did talk about earlier was the question about the ratio of staff to total revenue that in nonprofits, some of you have been on to Charity or Navigator and some of the other ones, which, by the way, you'll notice that Friendship Force gets a good rating from them. Some of them say that the magic number is that staff shouldn't be any more than 15% of your revenue. Well, in the case of Friendship Force, that model doesn't work because we don't raise money, as I said before, to stock food bank or to provide Meals on Wheels and keep a kitchen and that sort of thing. In those cases, because of the commodities and things that have to be purchased, they are going to be raising a whole lot of money to run programs that then take the staff percentage down to 15%, and the 85% are for those programs. We're in Friendship Force. We're paying to go on the trips. So the only thing that we pay for is the staff. So it makes it closer to 80% rather than the 15. Am I making any, does that make sense, Pat?
Yeah, Marilyn, this is Chris, and I think that does make sense, but maybe one way it will help people to understand it would be if, for example, if all the money related to the travel was included, then it would be closer to 15%. So if you took the flight, the host fees, the hotels, the food, everything you had in your travel, and then you said what percentage of that goes to FFI, it would probably be closer to 15%. But
I think it would be.
FFI is only, they're not running all of that money through their program like someone who's raising money for some other charity runs all the money through the charity and then distributes it back out again. And so I think that, you bring up a good point that we can't compare. It's not apples to apples when we're making those comparisons.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Any other questions?
Yeah, there was another question on the chat from Larry Friedman. He wanted to know what technology improvements is FFI seeking to invest in?
The magic word is portal. We need desperately a way for our members to be identified as members of Friendship Force. For right now, anyone can go to that box, the little box that Chris showed earlier, and put your email address in there. and yet have no affiliation with any club, not travel on any journeys, have no way of knowing whether or not that person is an appropriate citizen diplomat or not. We need to have a way for each and every one of us to be identified as a member of Friendship Force. As a journey coordinator, I've been so frustrated in filling out for the third time an ambassador's contact information. You should be able to go in one time, in one place, by the ambassador themselves, so that it's right. There's no typo mistakes, because if they are, the ambassador made them. And that information is there. You go on 3 journeys a year, filling out all that information 3 times makes no sense, especially when in the back end, the journey coordinator's redoing it 3 times for each of those 3 trips. I mean, that's number one. We need a portal. There's a pretty good back end Salesforce database that exists. That piece they've been working on that, and that is pretty solid. But what we need is the front end, the user end. The other piece that we really need is we need translation. And that's the reason why earlier in 2019, a call went out for volunteer translators within the organization. And that's been pretty successful. And if you look at that blog page, you'll notice that a lot of the campaigns for the fundraising campaign, they have been translated. But we need to have a website that when you go to it, it's not just in English.
Larry, did that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
I mean, I can get more down in the weeds, but that's basically, that's what we need.
Does anyone else have a question? We'll let Marilyn go. If you do, you can raise your hand in the participant window or type it in the chat window.
And while we're checking there, please feel free to contact me. If you've got more questions or just want to check in, please contact me. My contact information is in James's slideshow, his video, and it's my name, peterson.marilyn@comcast.net. And Jeremy is always willing to attend meetings as well. And he has a volunteer helping him manage his calendar now. Her name is Chris Duvall, and you can reach her at Chris, CHRIS, @friendshipforce.org.
I'm just typing that into the chat so people can see it.
Okay.
And Chris is assistant to Jeremy?
She's a volunteer member of Friendship Force, has been for a good number of years, and she's managing his calendar right now.
Okay.
And doing some other admin type things for him.
Okay, I don't see any other questions right now, so I guess we'll move on back to Sandy.
All right. Thanks again, Marilyn.
Thank you all. And I hope to see you one of these days when we're waiting to travel again.
Yes.
Good. And feel free to stick around and watch the rest of our meeting if you'd like, Marilyn.
Oh, well, thank you. I think I am going to depart. I have to go pick up vegetables this afternoon. It's the vegetable delivery day. So
Great.
bye-bye and thank you.
Bye. Bye, thanks. Bye-bye.